Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Hey friends, I am Neethi the pharmacist here with my co-hosts Janae Williams and Valerie Cruz, and we are on full. Welcome to Our View. Hey everybody, how's everyone doing?
Hi everyone.
Hey everyone.
So today we're so excited, man. We have Uncle Mark from Fat Radish Farm on the show.
Yes. This is going to be a great show. So glad you tuned in. Uncle Mark, as we call him, as we like to call him, is Mark Bedingfield. He's owned and managed several agricultural-related enterprises. Prior to that, he was the owner and is the owner of Fat Radish Farms in North Carolina and has practiced regenerative farming methods for close to 20 years now. So welcome, Uncle Mark. We're so glad to have you and want to know, is there anything else you'd like to share about your background for our viewers?
Just a little correction there. I haven't practiced regenerative farming for 20 years, only really relatively recently. I would say in the last 4 or 5, 6 years, I've really gotten interested in it. But it was a long journey from what I did in Florida. I was in the agriculture business in Florida, and I had several agriculture-related businesses dealing with citrus, row crops, tomatoes, and stuff like that. We used the Israeli irrigation equipment, and the focus then was to be more efficient. In other words, everyone was trying to be more efficient with resources because that was the key to sustainability. So that's my little correction there.
So, why don't we start by, obviously we've been introducing everyone in the audience to what is going on with the browning of the earth. And, the relationship to the soil and to nutrition. Today you have so many of these holistic physicians, or, not just even holistic physicians, actually. Everyone is talking about how our food in current day landscape is losing the nutrition profile. And so they're using that as an opportunity to sell supplements. And that's kind of interesting because they've already been working on trying to amend soils with, I would like for you to actually speak on this, Uncle Mark, about the way that conventional agriculture tries to amend soils versus living soils.
Well, in conventional agriculture, the three main, first of all, in conventional agriculture, the only thing they're interested in is looks, shelf life, and price. So they want the best looking apple, orange, whatever it is, the cheapest price that will last the longest on the shelf. And the only thing that you need to accomplish that is the three major elements that are in any agricultural crop, which is nitrogen, potassium, and potash. And so that's mainly what they put in the fertilizer. So when you monocrop year after year, you deplete the soil of all the other minor elements. Now they do additional foliar spraying with the minor elements, but it's not nearly enough. And anything that's taken into the plant has to be taken in through the foliage. So the timing of the spraying has to be perfect. And it's just, so if you check the soil profile in conventional agriculture, there will be almost nothing in the soil. And they're basically looking for a neutral pH so that whatever they put down, the three major elements will be taken up by the plant. So it makes big, beautiful vegetables, whatever it is you're growing, but the nutrition in it is not very good.
So you were,
So
I'm sorry. So you were mentioning you said monoculture? Is that what you said?
yes, it's when you take, way back 100 years ago or longer, when they farmed, you'd go to a farm and there'd be all kinds of different crops and animals running around. And they did a lot of crop rotation. But when they started trying to centralize agriculture, they needed to do it on a big scale. So that would be just taking one giant chunk of land and planting one crop. And you do that crop over and over and over and over. And even in Florida, which is this, I can't believe this, but I used to, I was just like everybody else. I thought, well, this is the way you do it. And they would fumigate the soil to kill the nematodes. So not only did they kill the nematodes in the soil, they killed everything else that was in it. All the good.
What is nematodes?
Nematodes was a parasite that feeds on the root of the plant. And so in order to be able to grow a crop without rotating it, in nature, you need to rotate crops. But in order to do that commercially, they would use a fumigant, methyl bromide, and they would fumigate the soil, and it would kill everything in the soil, kill the nematodes, but everything else too.
So it's not always just about the petrochemical fertilizers and herbicides, and even just the GMO seeds, but the soil's being gassed, and that's something that no one talks about these things, right? And they don't also talk about it with even everyone is on the organic trip kind of, and they're not realizing that there are so many other processes that are never part of the conversation, and I really hope that in this episode with you we can enlighten people on those things, because who was the human being that thought that they knew so much that they could figure out what the three things were to put into the soil, that would, resolve.
Well, in a word, it would be the.
Say again.
What were you saying?
In a word, it would be the Rockefeller Foundation.
I know that conversation is going to be a long and big one, I think.
The thing is, when I started, my journey was, started with, and we were going to save the world. I was really young, and we thought, in terms of efficiency, they used to throw fertilizer, just to the wind, all out on the soil, and then they used to irrigate with this big volume guns, and it was a huge waste of resources. So when we did the drip irrigation, 98% of whatever we put out on the field was available to the plant. So we thought that was the answer. But that in of itself is not even sustainable. All that does is it means that you've lengthened the time until you just have a collapse. You can last longer, but the ultimate end is going to be the same. It's not sustainable agriculture.
So, Uncle Mark, what is the difference between that perfectly round, red, juicy looking apple with 25 others that look exactly like it, and an apple that would come from soil that's rich with nutrients? What's the difference?
Well, here's what the difference is. Most of the stuff you see, particularly because right now, the soil in the United States, for the most part, I would say 99.9% is basically dead. Some areas out in the, Idaho and places like that, there's still some good soil left, but most of the soil's been depleted over the years of this monoculture commercial method of agriculture. But the difference is that there shouldn't be a difference in that nice looking apple if it's done on regenerative soil than if it's done commercially. But it takes a while to get from to transition back to the way nature intended. And So right now, you're seeing most organic crops will be misshapen. They won't be as well uniform. They'll have some bug, or the bugs have eaten on them, and that's that's normal. But ultimately, I have seen places that have never been touched by commercial agriculture, where the oranges look just as beautiful as the ones you see that have had all these chemicals sprayed on them, and these oranges have never had anything sprayed.
So the nature is self-regulating, and the living soils that you guys create on Fat Radish Farm are self-regulating. Which is the food that we're promoting. Because if you're eating regenerative food, then it allows our bodies also to be self-regulating. So can you speak on that a little bit? Because I'm still going to say, how do these people know what the amendments should be for any crop? I'm always astonished by the arrogance, of man in this science. I mean, I'm fascinated with the science too. I think that it's really fun and cool to learn. We all enjoy that side of it, but
it's not that they don't know, they don't care.
So can we talk about that?
Yeah, they don't care. They only care.
I mean, this for a reason. Let's talk about that.
Yes, when I used to grow tomatoes down in South Florida, for example, they picked them green. And the reason they picked them green, and they used the commercial fertilizers, because they wanted to blow the tomato up as big as possible. They wanted one slice to cover Big Mac. And that's what the brokers wanted, what they bought. And they wanted them to sit on a store shelf, and not rot. So the only thing they cared about was, the uniformity of shape and the shelf life, and that they could do it cheap. So that's why, and the only thing they need to do that really were the three major, the nitrogen, the phosphate, and the potash. If they could have figured out how to do it without that, they would have. But they didn't care about the nutrition. They weren't paying any attention to nutrition. You see, soil is like a soil bank, and so it's like your savings account. You keep drawing down on your savings account, and you don't replenish it. It gets lower and lower till finally you're out of money. And that's the same way with the soil, and that's where we are now in this country. The soil bank has got is deficit, negative balance. And so you see agriculture collapsing really all over the world, but especially in the United States. It's not working anymore.
Well,
and that's what got me interested in this regenerative farming, with my nephew, my sister. And I am, like I said, I was like everybody else. I was taught, that was old fashioned, but that man could do much better. But then, there's a lot of politics that get involved, and it's in order to centralize an industry, you can't do it in a sustainable way. And the driving force, but behind what they're doing, has nothing to do with nutrition and feeding the world. It has to do with control of the food supply, monopolistic control of the food supply, and that's all it's about. It's not about nutrition. It's not about feeding the world. It's about lining the pockets of agribusiness.
You keep mentioning sustainability. When you speak of sustainability, what's that mean? Like, you said how farmers are doing certain practices, but it wouldn't be sustainable. What does that mean?
Because sustainability means that you put as much back in the bank every year as you take out. So if I can I'll do your bank account analogy.
I love that analogy.
If you take $100 out of your bank account and, on Friday, and you put $100 back in, that's sustainable.
Right.
If you've got a, if you take out more than you put in every week, sooner or later, you're going to run out of money.
And what they're taking out in our view is the nutrition level of the soil.
It's not even in our view. It's an absolute scientific fact.
Yeah.
Right.
You can, and they know this, but they think the story they tell is we can't feed the world like this unless we do this. But the reality is they can't centralize agriculture unless they do it like that.
So obviously, the people in charge, benefit from this so many ways because, what better way to, what more, efficient way to secure an income for them, but to control the food. I mean, you can't live, without eating. Everybody needs food. I mean, you can only go 30 days without eating. And so I think it's interesting. I think everyone should be finding it interesting that the fear that's being instilled in society right now, we also talked about the social engineering piece that's happening, but I think it's interesting and everyone should be, looking at this part about how they, and I'm talking about the people in charge, right? How it is that they've managed to centralize this industrialized food that they're calling agriculture, which is not, it's very far from actual agriculture. And it is creating, which we know nature doesn't create anything uniform and nature's not repeatable. But from a business perspective, you want everything to be repeatable. And it's really incredibly profitable if the food is insufficient and you've told everybody it's insufficient and now you can sell supplements. So now everybody, then you end up with people like where they're at today. I can't tell you how many people I meet today that they have like an entire kitchen full of supplements and very little food that they're actually consuming, which is easier. It's easier to buy a bunch of pills and bottles and things. But what I think that we want people to kind of wake up to is the fact that when you're consuming things that are enzymatically dead, man-made, with a small vision of the entire picture, because human beings don't actually know what the big picture is, right? Whereas actual living soil and living food is self-regulating for our bodies that can't even recognize. I don't know, am I getting too big with this or too broad? I mean,
no.
Do you guys are you following what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak more to that?
The supplement, what came from the supplement industry, how that came about is you see, they recognized a long time they were depleting the soil. So the easy thing to do, and I was a king supplement taker. I mean, when I'd go off somewhere for a weekend, I had 2 suitcases, one for clothes and one for supplements. And I literally would take, I had 10 or 15 bottles of different supplements. So, and I thought I was doing the right thing. Well, the food doesn't have the stuff in it, and this is really easy. Just pop a handful of pills, and I'm doing the right thing. And I was creating expensive urine. That's what I was doing.
Right.
And if you do it, a lot of people say, well, it costs too much to eat right. But the thing about it is, number one, what's your health worth? But number two, I can tell you because I've done a lot of research on supplements. I took a lot of them. And there was a time where I would spend $500 or $600 a month on supplements.
That's interesting.
And because when you really get into the supplements, you see there's good supplements and there's bad supplements.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them aren't, some of them you might as well just throw them down the drain. You go to Walmart, that stuff, you have to get the chelated supplements. They're very expensive. So you say, oh, I need a bottle of this. It's $50 for a month's supply. This one is $50 a month, and you can spend $500 or $600 a month, and and it's still not as effective as eating biodynamic food. What I call biodynamic food is food that has grown on a regenerative farming methods of biodynamic soil.
With living soils. Let's talk about living
soil.
Because
Yeah,
people at this moment, Uncle Mark, are they're out of hope. They feel hopeless that they can't eat the nutrition. They have to have the supplements and the food, and that is where it becomes more expensive. Where I'm saying, no, what you need.
No, you can throw the supplement unless you have some kind of specific thing. I think what I take, the only thing I take now is I take vitamin C and I take curcumin.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only two things I take. And I literally used to take, 15 or 20 different supplements.
Right.
But if you look at if you're farming or getting your food off of regenerated soil, all those vitamins and minerals are in the soil. And if they're in the soil, they get taken up into the plant. You eat the plant, or you eat the animal that ate the plant, and you're getting it all.
So let's talk about the animals, because, there's this whole supplementing the soil thing, and, as you've said before, we've talked about this time and time again, you got to mine these supplements from somewhere. So, what, one of the questions that we had for you was like, where do the ingredients for these supplements even come from? We had talked about tracing the meatball back out of a can of, spaghetti and meatballs. If you had a can of spaghetti and meatballs and you had to trace the meatball back or trace the bologna back or whatever. So, no one's ever questioning and tracing back where the supplement came from. Why does somebody think that you can just come up with some vitamin B12 from wherever, and your body actually can understand what it is? Like when you take that pill or powder or liquid or whatever it is, then how does your body on a cellular level recognize that? Because I'll have people argue me to death over that. They'll say to me, no, I take the best supplements. Well, it's enzymatically dead, and how do you know which part of the B it is? Because every year we learn that there's not just one B vitamin, there's a million of them. And then, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't know that even, I'm talking about within 5 years ago, probably people didn't know that. Within 10 years ago, I know people didn't even know what an antioxidant was, and they're still not clear what that is or what that means or how it comes about, versus nature that's already got this figured out. So,
I think people think that the pharmaceutical people who make the supplements have it figured out as well.
Right.
They believe that
some man knows
that
better.
science can create nutrients.
Science. The science is going to know.
Here's what's interesting. First, they recognized that the soil was being depleted, so that's where the supplements got really popular. Okay. Then it's a very good question. Where does it come from? You don't know. I read the other day where a third of our garlic comes from China. Did y'all know that?
No, because ours comes from your farm.
Yeah, I know, but a third comes from China, and actually, the Chinese are now selling us chickens, and of course they bought Smithfield pork, and I can promise you, anything comes from China, I don't want to get within 100 feet of it.
They're taking the chickens to China to package them.
Yes, and I won't get into the ugly part of that, but that you have no idea where it comes from, and just because it says organic, that doesn't mean anything, because organic can still have heavy metals in it. You see? Well,
they're feeding it arsenic.
Yeah, so it can have mercury in it, it can have lead in it, it can still be organic. So
and when you say they're feeding it arsenic, what are you saying? That the chicken feed?
They feed arsenic and antibiotics to the chickens because it stimulates their appetite.
Well, if you're living in a house, Valerie, and you never get to go outside and you never see the light of day, you never see sunshine. We all know, like in the winter, if you've ever been, like stuck in the house, you have this massive cabin fever, then, you start becoming depressed. Okay. So all these living creatures, why does anybody believe they aren't depressed?
Mhm.
And so if they're in a state of depression, they're not going to eat. And the farmers just know that they have to gain, right, Mark? I mean, all these chicken farmers
Right.
know that they need the creatures to be eating X amount because they're trying to industrialize life, which I keep saying over and over and over again. You cannot industrialize life. And the only way, if you're going to start putting living creatures in a house and never let them go outside, never let them touch the soil, even if you open the door and invite them out, which they're terrified to go touch it, but they have to do something to stimulate their appetite because now they're in a state of depression. They don't even want to get up and eat. They're not happy. So if there's no joy, there's no passion to eat or want to live. So nature immediately wants them to go ahead and just start dying faster, which is what they're trying to do. So they feed now the farmer's got to give them some kind of drug to make them want to eat, which is the arsenic, right?
Well, that's one of them. The antibiotics, though, are another big part of that. They didn't feed them antibiotics just to keep them from getting disease. They feed them antibiotics because it kills all the gut bacteria, and then it makes them want to. It stimulates their appetite.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you go from
Wow.
a chick, a new chick, to a processed chicken in 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
That's just incredible.
They're eating
I
the
mean, that's
babies.
like
People say
crazy.
they don't want to eat veal because they don't want to eat babies, but all the chickens they eat are babies.
You
I
know,
don't know.
chicken. Yeah, it's not normal, and the thing about it is, and that's the other thing. The key thing to remember is none of this stuff that they do is the supplement industry would be no need for it if people ate regenerative.
Right.
Okay, the thing about it is you have to you can't turn a switch and go back tomorrow. It's going to have to. It took years to get to this place. It's going to take a couple generations if they start now to get away from.
Yeah.
3 generations we've seen in the livestock on the farm so far.
Yeah.
with the hogs.
So the thing is that it's they have so ruined the soil that it's not going to happen overnight. But the best thing anybody can do is to support, and try to get all your food locally, because I can promise you this, I can tell you about, and I work with some very big agriculture companies, big ones, and they don't care about your health. Trust me. They don't care.
They're
if it's
running a
nutrition.
business.
They're looking for the bottom dollar. I
Mhm.
have seen tomatoes fall off a tomato truck, bounce down a road, and they don't even break.
Wow.
And they take these tomatoes that you see a lot of them in the grocery store. They pick them green, and then they gas them with ethyl bromide to turn them red. And that's why when you cut them open, and you ever eat one of them, they have absolutely no taste.
Right.
So they do that with everything. They actually spray live virus on on meats and stuff. And it goes way beyond just the method of farming. Then how is it treated after it's processed and goes to grocery store?
And they don't
tell
talk
you.
about those processes, do they?
See, for example, I tell you, because my parents owned a retail meat store. And when you put meat out on the showcase, when you go to buy meat,
Mhm.
if you don't, within 2 days, that meat starts turning brown,
Mhm.
which is normal. It's aging.
It's
We
oxidizing.
used to have these little scrapers, that you'd go scrape it just kind of refresh it. But they in these grocery stores, they spray it with live viruses to keep it red.
Ugh.
It's not normal for that meat to stay red like that. People
Right.
don't know.
Wow.
And so, and like the fish, all the fish that comes, from the fish farms, you might as well be drinking sewer water. It's literal. Oh, and and I didn't even know this, but 75% of all the tilapia in the United States come from China. And if
And
you
they're
look at,
cloned, Uncle Mark. You know that, right?
yeah, I know it's like
Frankenfish.
yeah, it's really weird
Mhm.
stuff.
The salmon
So-
too. They're Frankenfishing cloning, and they have talked about it. It was even on the Today Show. I mean, it's been on network television, and they've even been cloning red meat. and they don't have
Yeah.
to label it because
No, and see, here's the thing, and one of the biggest investors in these this cloning and this artificial meat. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yeah.
yes,
They're actually making it in a petri
In a
dish.
lab.
Who's
Mhm.
investing in that? Who are the biggest investors? Bill Gates.
mhm,
I forget this guy from Great Britain. You know, the guy that owns Virgin Airlines. That guy.
yeah.
And so, do you think they would eat that? They don't eat that stuff.
No,
But
You know-
they keep telling everyone it's so that the world can be fed because of the population of the world
Yes, but
and the
here-
depleted
But see, we know
soil.
that
Here-
it's the
here is
browning of the earth.
Here is what I would tell your listeners.
Mhm.
Quit being chumps. I mean, not only is this stuff healthy for you, you know, this regenerative stuff that's grown naturally, not only is it healthy for you, the only reason they tell people that is so they can centralize it.
Right.
Because in order to practice regenerative farming method, it has to be seasonal and it has to be local. And it cannot be centralized.
Right.
And it
And
requires a
anybody that tells you,
relationship.
and anybody that tells you, for example, with orange juice, for example, once they pasteurize it, once they cook it, you might as well just get Tang and mix it up in water and drink it,
Mhm. No
Mhm.
nutrients in it.
because they've killed
Yeah,
there's
all
nothing.
the live bacteria, all the enzymes, everything that makes it able to interact. And this is what they found out: the bacteria in the orange juice interacts with your gut bacteria, and that's what makes it work.
Right.
And there is no, bacteria in a supplement or in a pasteurized product or in any kind of processed food stuff.
Right.
So
the
what
synergy
makes it
between nature and our bodies is gone
Exactly.
at that moment. And that
and
synergy,
that's the thing about supplements. The supplements, they don't have any enzymes in it. They're not live.
right.
And so when you take the supplement, I'm not saying it doesn't help any, but it's a small percentage of absorption rate that you get from eating live, real food.
Right.
And how do they make these enzymes, Uncle Mark? Because that's the other funny thing. The synergy
Well,
is gone from the living foods,
no
but then
one
they,
no one has convinced me that they do that. I don't believe most of what they profess, to be honest with you. Because where are you going to get all that? I mean, it's how that can't be.
right. So
You know,
find out
it's
where the ingredients for your supplements even come from, folks. And
Don't
you
even
have all
know.
these large companies that are touting all of this scientific research. I mean, how do you really know?
but
I-
but here
I think a lot of times what happens is people forget that food is supposed to nourish your body. People now are eating in order to socialize or
Mhm.
feel good or
Which it's supposed to bring joy.
right.
Okay, come on. Now, real food, our regenerative food brings us a lot of joy.
Mhm.
Right.
And I always tell everybody, you've heard me say this so many times, like if you're not happy, if it's not bringing you joy and excitement, then it's not, your stress level is going to be so high. Or, the joy factor is what actually helps to reset your hormonal system, when you're consuming the food.
But
And
I think
addiction is not joy.
Right.
A lot of the food that's out there that's very easily accessible and cheap is
Mhm,
very, very highly addictive, full of sugar. They can get it in there
mhm.
and just blank with nutrients. And it's not joy to feel like you're controlled by your food, like you have to have that,
Right.
or else you're angry or whatever emotions you would have with it. When it's nutrient dense, it gives you a different kind of joy. You get an energy.
Yes.
You feel better. Just your well-being is good, and you're healthier.
And you miss it, but you're not addicted to it.
Right.
I always say, like, when strawberries come into season and we're so like, I love strawberries.
Yeah.
But then the strawberries go out of season and you're like, I really miss the strawberries. But you're not having a withdrawal,
Right. But people don't miss anything anymore because it's all shipped in
It's
from
always
somewhere
there,
else.
right?
It's always there. We need to be missing something because we need to, like Uncle Mark, you talked about local. People need a way. Like our viewers are getting a lot of truth right now, and some are overwhelmed.
Yes.
But
Well,
to know that you can shop local.
Just remember that I've heard people say, "Oh, they wouldn't do that if it was bad for you." Don't believe it.
Don't believe it.
Their
Not when
business,
you're making
their
money.
business, these are giant corporations. And
They're
what
not
they're
people,
interested-
they're
what they're
corporations.
interested in, they're interested in monopolies.
Mhm.
They're not interested in competition. And of course, they already know. Do you know at Monsanto that their cafeteria, they only serve organic food
Interesting.
at Monsanto? The Chinese government officials have their private organic farms. And haven't you ever wondered how some of these old guys running around seem like they're never going to die? You know, I think David Rockefeller lived to be 101. Do you think he's eating the garbage out of Food Line?
He's not eating Doritos.
No.
But don't
So-
you think it's
so-
a different mindset that people have to get? They
They
have
wanna-
to realign their minds to think of food as a nutritional source for their body first, and then
Exactly.
as pleasure and
Right.
everything
I mean, I
else.
keep telling
And
everyone,
opt
why are you
out
going to
of
eat
the-
off
opt
the...
out of the system. Don't buy into the system because they just want to control the population. That's all they want to do. They
Well-
want to.
well, now
they
you're
don't want
talking-
you to have a choice.
Now you're talking about a conspiracy theory, Uncle. I mean, come on. I tell everyone you can Google it though, right? Like you say, you can find the information everywhere. It's not a secret. And it isn't a conspiracy when you can find the information.
Right. There's
Well,
facts.
the
there's
CIA
science
coined the
behind
word conspiracy theory when everybody, I won't get into the nitty gritty, but that word comes from the CIA. And of course, a conspiracy, all that is when more than when two people get together, you can have you're having a conspiracy right now, a conspiracy to educate people about healthy food. You know,
It's
that's
not
a
healthy food,
conspiracy.
it's alive. We're saying regenerative. You know-
Conspiracies can be good and they can be bad.
Right.
Right.
But you know, of course, it's a conspiracy.
Well, I
And
think
they're not.
I think it's a label, just like everything else is. And
Yeah.
I think as part of what we're trying to do is get away from normal labels and reinvent our own, so that it helps people to get out of the old mindsets and into a new
Well,
regenerative lifestyle mindset.
We're trying to give people independence and they don't even understand what that feels like
Right.
because they're so controlled that, you know, they're so used to being controlled and manipulated that when you actually try to give them something that would create independence for them, they actually can't believe it. They when I tell people, you know, I want you to go talk to Uncle Mark yourself and get your own relationship with him. They are like, but wouldn't you be mad because now we're going to take that power away from you? No, you can't take any power away from me. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I want you to meet Mark and I want you to go to Fat Radish Farm and I want you to support them and learn what's happening over there. And if that means that you just go see them every week and you don't come to see me, whatever, that's fine. And people can't believe me. You know what, Uncle Mark, I tell them, go there, meet the people. You don't have to talk to me. You know, I don't need to be the person holding your food over your head like on a string. I'm not trying to control. I mean, as somebody who I work with, do you ever feel like I'm trying to keep anybody from you? Or,
No.
I mean,
The thing about it is that's what people don't get. See, they're so used to being subjected to monopolistic enterprises. There is no way this can be monopolized. This has to be millions of people, you know, cooperating. And that's why they hate it so, because it can't be controlled, it can't be centralized, it can't be monopolized, and
Well, I
And
think
one-
that brings fear, right?
Yeah.
So the
and
fear
it costs
is
them money.
if it's
It
not
costs them
controlled.
money. What are they going to do? It costs money. Look,
you need
if you take-
terrorism to control people,
if
right?
you take control, the most important investment, in my opinion, anybody can make is to take control of their health.
Right.
And I'm getting old here. See, I'm starting to think about, okay, you know, I need to start. I've always tried to, but I didn't have the knowledge. the internet now is this wonderful thing.
Right.
Right.
But I did the best I could with the information I knew. That's why I was taking all these supplements. But you know, if you take the best investment you can make is to take control of your health, and once you do that, I mean, you know, you that's the real essence of being free.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't call it free to have to run down to. I mean, I know, you know, run down to the doctor every 2 weeks or whatever, you know, is like ridiculous.
And
You know,
we
and
want to give them this freedom. We're trying to promote that freedom.
That's the
And
ultimate.
people get confused. They're just
Or
like,
having a
what?
choice, like people say, well, where do you go get food? Well, you know, that's what you're trying to do here is to expose it to it can be found.
Right.
And the more people that look for it, the more it'll be available.
Right.
The one thing I'll tell you about the supplement industry, I can tell you that we're at a tipping point with the supplement industry because the big boys, Amazon and all of them, are trying to buy all these supplement companies out.
Yep.
And when they do that, they'll adulterate all those products. And
They're already doing it, right?
Yeah, they're already doing it. And you know, and as far as supplements go, it's the same as like when you start talking about, now there are good supplements, but you are going to pay for them and you're going to have to, you know, do your research on, but they're still not nearly as good as getting it in nature's way.
Right.
There's just nothing that beats that.
Because what we have to understand, and what I like going back to, is that our bodies are made to absorb food and use that food to nourish us, keep us not getting sick, and keep us, you know, functioning as a system. Because all we are systems.
Well, yeah, and see, they found out now that you know, your gut biome is like your second brain.
Yes.
And now, so I mean, all of a sudden it clicked for me. Oh yeah, so you got all this bacteria if you have a healthy gut. So that's why nature made the food full of this bacteria, and these bacteria mix up and they create a synergy, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah, we're so sterile. Everything has to be so perfectly clean. Like I had someone ask me, so should I get that cleanser for my vegetables? Should I, you know, spray it beforehand? No, it nature. We didn't do this. If you were to go way back in the day, you know, you just I'm picking on apples, but you just picked an apple, you just ate it. Like people don't have to do all of that.
They're
Nature
villainizing
is taking care of itself, and your gut needs it. I have learned so much about, you need to Google some things about your gut, okay? Because if your gut is healthy, you're going to be healthy. If your gut is sick, you're going to be sick. There's more of them being your good bacteria than you, but it could be bad bacteria. You know, if you're eating ice cream and taking supplements, it's not going to do anything for you. So you really got to think about, how do I take care of myself? And supplements aren't a cop-out. You can't just get a supplement and then be healthy. You got to pay attention to nature.
So, Uncle Mark, can you talk about like the absorption of the vitamins and the minerals of supplements as the, you know, the efficiency of that, you know, versus the ones you get from the real food? Because the living food that we have, you know, I believe it allows our bodies and our cells to work, you know, far more efficiently to absorb the nutrition and the minerals, particularly, right? Like from the bone broth and things of that nature.
Yes, the bacteria, because all food, see, you have these people that are paranoid. Oh, we got to kill all the bacteria. You know, spray the chicken down with, you know, what does it tell you when they tell you, you know, you cook this chicken, you better cook it good or it'll make you sick.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Right.
Why would you want to eat a piece of meat or something that if you didn't cook it to death, it would make you sick?
That's why a lot of people overcook their food and then they think they don't know how to cook. And, you know, they're like burning it, or they're terrified. They're literally terrified that if they
that's why they tell you that. That's why, you know, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the milkman used to come up and bring the milk to the front door.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing better than that. Than that milk. There's nothing better than that. That's a living food.
Yeah. But a lot of
Once
people
you-
don't
once
realize
you-
the stuff that's in the grocery store, it will make you sick.
Right.
A lot of it will.
For
It's
sure.
Conventional
not
You know,
meats.
it's not self-regulating. Like nature is self-regulating, and so there's a balance, you know. And if nature goes bad, it screams at you. There's no confusion.
Now
Like-
there's nothing more healthy than fresh squeezed orange juice. You know, there's nothing more healthy than a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice. I mean, it is very healthy. If it comes out of a carton out of the grocery store,
It's
you're
dead.
drinking sugar water.
Right.
There's nothing worse. So, you know, it just doesn't. I mean, I don't drink orange juice anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had to stop buying it.
You know, so, and the same with milk, and the same,
Yeah.
and actually the same with beef and everything else. You know, I can remember and my parents, you know, when they had this retail meat market, my mother used to, whenever another shipment of beef would come in, she had a little single burner stove in the back of the store and a frying pan, and she would cut a steak off of it to test it. And basically, she threw it in there. And I said, Mother, that cow's still kicking. And she just heated it up. It was so rare. But that's the way she liked it. She never got sick. None of us ever got sick.
Because it was clean. It was
Because
good.
it was clean. It was grass fed. It was clean. It hadn't had all these viruses sprayed on it. And haven't you ever wondered how they keep, make all these beef products and they all look the same? It's all uniform.
Mm.
And they use this protein product called meat glue.
Oh yeah. You know, they were also using that to take lesser cuts of meat and glue it together to make more prime
Right.
cuts of meat. Yeah, that actually also
That's the other thing that I think people need to understand is the quality of the food is important. And just because somebody says it is doesn't mean it is. And so food integrity to me is like really important. You need to know who's growing your food. And
all the
people
more
that-
reason I try to connect
You need to know-
everybody. Yeah,
You need to know where it's coming from.
right.
You need to know what their practices are. You need to know what they're doing. You need to know how it's processed. Like it's that's all very important because that's all a determining factor in its nutrition. Because a lot of the processes they use in the processing of even like in the tomatoes I was telling you about, but even in the beef and whatever else it is you're buying, everything in the grocery store, a lot of the processing takes the nutrients out of
Right.
it, you know.
Which is
So,
why
yeah,
when they
they've
take
got it.
our good eggs and then they try to process them to put them in the store, they want them not just grated, but they want them soaked in bleach water. And,
Exactly.
you know, that's why they have an expiration date on them. Eggs don't have an expiration date on them otherwise.
No, you'll never crack an egg if it's bad and not know it.
Right. Immediately.
Exactly. That's the way nature intended.
So
And that's the whole thing. So, literally the stuff in the grocery store is absolute garbage. The bottom line, and I didn't used to feel this way, but the stuff in the grocery store is absolute garbage. And it just is.
Right.
Because there's no way you can ship stuff from California or from Chile up here to North Carolina or something. We're not doing something to it in that processing that's not degrading the product. There's no way.
Right.
Even if everything else is equal. It's like somebody told me one time, why do you process chickens on the farm? And I said, well, so what I'm supposed to do, because that's the natural way to do it. Number one. Number two, so I'm supposed to do all this work to raise these chickens and then load them up on the truck and drive them halfway across the state. So by the time they get there, they're all hormoned up from being in stress. I don't think so.
No, sir.
We're
close to the hour, but we want to, we're actually going to have a part 2 of this conversation because, you know, we've been kind of hammering this supplement piece, but I'd like to take the conversation towards how we are creating living soils, how that is possible to do, how quickly it can actually happen, and what, you know, livestock has to do with it. Because I don't think anybody really knows. But before we close this supplement part of it, you know, because I think we've made it clear, I hope we've made it clear to everyone that, you know, you can't supplement your body and you also can't just supplement the soil with some, you know, enzymatically dead, man-made, you know, or petrochemical or pharmaceutically made 3 things or 4 things or 5 things, because living soil is far more synergistic. And I think that we can, you know, we have a lot.
Yes.
We have a lot more to talk about as far as that goes. But ladies, what do you think? Do we have anything else that we really want to know from Uncle Mark regarding the supplements? Because, I mean, I really want everyone at home to truly be asking the question, where do the ingredients for these supplements come from? And then also, what are the processes? And then at some moment, when are you going to finally just say it's too exhausting to care and just give up on that and like lean on nature as it was intended? I mean, that would be my hope for all of you.
Yeah, it could be the wake up call is right now. Because I know some folks may actually have just come from the drive-through at any number of fast food restaurants. And you know, and are like many of us who were taking many, many supplements because that we already knew what we were going to do. And you already know that that food is blank and it gives you nothing. But I've got my supplements. But now, so here we have some folks that are hearing this and are like, wow, so that's why my health is the way that it is. Or if you're 20 years old, that's why my health will be what it will be.
Well, the 20-year-olds aren't ready for any of that.
Yeah,
they can't even understand that.
So it's really important for you to begin to ask those questions and to know what those next steps are, right? Local, you know, you see something at, even if it's at the best, I'm trying not to use names, but the, you know, best grocery store that everyone says is the best. And you go,
there is
and
no
it's
best grocery store.
Right. It's from Mexico or it's from North Carolina, you know, because everyone coming from a fast food restaurant may not be ready to drive right to Fat Radish Farm. So if they're not ready to drive right there, at least let it make you start to think. Mexico, let me think truck, let me think ethyl bromide, let me think, no, I'm not going to do that to myself. Mm-hmm. Let me at least go to, you know, this local North Carolina farm, think local, think seasonal. So changing mindset, right?
And why is everybody, I'm still confused. I really want y'all to do the math on this, like actually do it, okay? But if you're taking supplements and you're buying food at the store, can you do the math? Because everyone says that, you know, Uncle Mark, you just said that you were spending $500 a month on supplements. And, you know, if you do the math on our beef subscription, chicken subscription, and pork subscription combined to get like a round robin of nutrition, you know, from different species or whatever. And even with the produce, it's like within $400 a month to do that. And so it's far cheaper, and it's living, and it's enzymatically alive, and so many other things. And so when people say that they can't afford to do a better job, I don't believe you, because I want you, even if it's the Walmart supplements or whatever it is that you think you're doing, and whatever your food is, I don't think you know how much money you're spending. That's the whole problem.
If you research the supplements, which I did, you can't take the Walmarts. If you're really into supplements, you got to take the best ones, okay? And if you start taking the best ones, let's say you want vitamin C, 4 or 5. I mean, you can spend $50 a month. Yeah.
How do you even know?
All the regulars.
I can tell you. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm spending a fortune on supplements.
Yeah, because your body needs different things at different
times.
But
you're an incredible chemist to even know what your body actually needed because, you know, I just
Well, I
want
didn't know what it needed because I still didn't feel all that great. You know.
So you weren't even doing a good job.
But what it is, here's what it is. It's what I think is psychological. People know that the food we're eating is garbage, okay? Intuitively, they know that, I think.
I hope.
So you say, well, I'm going to take this to compensate for all the garbage I'm eating. And so that's kind of like a placebo and kind of like, it's easy, I did it, so I don't need to feel guilty now. And I feel bad, and it's normal to feel this way. I have a friend, I want you guys to interview him soon, but he's he's got quite a story, and his personality is completely changed. His he's off of 5 out of 6 pharmaceutical drugs he was on. He's off now.
Wow.
He was diabetic. He's no longer diabetic. 3 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and he said, Mark, it's just like you said, I don't crave it because you're addicted to it. They actually, and all this processed food, they put stuff in it that is addictive.
Yeah.
MSG, the Japanese developed MSG during World War II so they could put it on rotten meat so the soldiers would eat it. Because it's
That's what they're feeding our military. That is a shame. Somebody, they need to be ashamed of themselves for that.
Once you've cleaned you've detoxed yourself and you're on real food, you can go and you can eat something and you'll know it right away. I mean, you know that. You'll know it.
Yeah.
Something ain't right here. You don't feel exactly right. And that's what it is. And he is like, his whole personality has changed. So what does that work?
We encourage everybody. That's part of what we try to do is encourage everybody. Just try it. It won't hurt to try, to go talk with your local farmer, find out how they're farming, use local products to feed yourself with, and see how it feels.
And don't be overwhelmed. Yeah. Don't be overwhelmed. Don't try to do it all at one time. Do little things. Just do some little things, first, and get in the swing, and then because
like practice driving somewhere.
He told me that he had forgotten what it like to feel good.
Right. Well, most people think they feel good and they don't, and they don't know.
He didn't even know that he was miserable.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. All right, so we're going to wrap this up and we'll come back with you for our part 2. And that's everybody's going to want to tune in next week and hear this next conversation, because we've been talking about all the problems and all the things that are wrong. But, we have solutions. I mean, we've been kind of going over some of the solutions as well. But I think that it's important for you guys to hear this next bit. So tune in next week. Hey friends, we hope that this production has served you in some way today. If you would like to hear more shows like this, please help us grow our army of Minas by visiting our website and making a donation today. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And, I ask that you please like and share this video, follow us on Facebook, become involved with us on Instagram and Twitter, and all of our links can be found in the show notes. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.